Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Kentuckiana Travel Ball Podcast. My name is T. Gridge. I'll be your host. As always, I'm joined by Rick Hines. What's up, Rick?
What's up, T?
Excited about this show. But before we get into it, I first want to thank you for listening, because if you're hearing our voices right now, you're listening or watching in some form or fashion. So thank you for tuning in. Our numbers have been fantastic. We have an awesome show for you next week. I don't want to spill the beans too much yet, but we got a really, really funny guest that'll be on next week. So
way funnier than our guest this week.
Way funnier than this week's guest, but next week should be pretty epic, I should say. Is epic one of these words you guys use? We have actually some crowd tonight. We have some people in the audience trying to use these hip words that the kids use. Kentuckiana Travel Ball Podcast. Our sponsor is Guardian Baseball. So if you need any sort of baseball gear, and I'm talking absolutely anything, if you go to guardianbaseball.com and you put in the code Kentuckiana Travel Ball, you get an additional 15% off. Actually, Billy Crutcher from the ELS Bats was over at Guardian this past week. He bought some stuff using Kentuckiana Travel Ball Podcast.
Nice.
Got his 15% off.
Attaboy.
There you go, Billy. Thank you for supporting the show. Thank you for shopping at Guardian. This will be your last week for the Easton Hype Bat giveaway. So you can sign up for your chance to win. You can choose from a U-Trip or a BB Core certification. I haven't heard of an Easton Hype Bat yet, but what I'm told, well, I've heard, but I haven't seen one used yet, but I'm told it's extremely hot. It's a great bite. Yeah, get hype. So excited about our guest this week. So a good friend of ours, Mr. Jason Betts, is in the studio. What's up, Jason?
What's going on, man?
So thanks for being here. Jason, I just want to kind of start with your backgrounds. So you are the coach of the 12U KBC West team.
Correct.
And you guys used to be the Sting for several years.
Correct.
Jason, why don't you start with your baseball background?
Yeah, so I'm from Louisville, born here. I played Little League at the illustrious Okolona Little League.
Okolona Little League, all right.
Long before travel ball.
Yep.
Went to high school at Southern, played under Coach David Burns there.
Okay.
Signed with Morehead State University out of, which is in Morehead, Kentucky, obviously, under Coach John Jarnigan.
Okay.
Transferred out of there back to Spalding University and started their baseball program under Coach Kevin Cox. Played college ball there, and then played professional ball in the Frontier League for Florence Freedom,
which is now the Y'alls.
Oh, cool. Florence Y'alls. Yeah.
So that's that team.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
We played in a pretty cool tournament there that I would suggest people go and do. The thing is they actually cut the field into two different fields, but it's a pretty neat little thing. It's a cool stadium.
It's a gorgeous stadium. Yeah.
Now, did you play in that stadium, or was that
Not.
before? Okay.
No, I did not. So it's ironic because I played Spalding when they started their baseball program, and then Florence Freedom was in their first year, and we actually played at the University of Dayton's field.
Wow.
Yeah,
okay.
So I never got the chance. They were building that stadium when I was playing. Okay. So
gotcha.
Yeah. So quickly recognized my career wasn't going to go much further than that. So I air quote retired after playing there. So I started coaching with high school with Coach Burns for a year at Southern, and then a few of us guys that went to Spalding together. Jared Durham, I played college ball with, was the head coach at Fern Creek, and took a couple of us. Then we were coaching at Fern Creek High School for a few years.
Now, was Jim Gross part of that? Or was
Jimmy Gross, who is the coach at Southern, currently was one of the assistant coaches there as well.
Gotcha.
So we coached there for a few years until career took away the time that it took to coach high school. So I was out of it until I came back to help coach Sting last year.
Okay, cool. So your son Bryson's a really great friend of our kids, goes to school with our kids, great kid. Going to be a great baseball player. You and Amanda have put a ton into his development, and he's had some things that I won't quite get into it, but he's had some things that were not by his doing, some medical things, but he's doing great now, I'm told, right?
Yeah, he's doing good. We had a small hiccup last week, so I mean he's gone through a lot for a 12-year-old, but far more than I've ever had to go through. But I mean, he had a small hiccup last week, had to have a little emergency surgery, but he got over that pretty quickly. He should be back on the field probably next week, I would imagine.
Awesome, man. Well, it couldn't happen soon enough. So tell me, why KBC West? Because it seems like Sting had this awesome, I don't know,
reputation.
Yeah, everybody wanted to be part of the Sting program, but then you guys kind of left Sting and went to KBC West. Explain to me why.
Yeah, there's probably a couple of reasons why we did that. I mean, ultimately, Sting's a part of the Vipers program. It's a phenomenal program, obviously, like you said, and we have no complaints about Sting program. For us, being with Sting since we were 7, I believe. I think that we actually joined it when we were 7. I think they were together when they were 6, actually.
Okay.
So over the years, you have normal attrition from players here and there. You lose 1, you lose 2, you gain a player back, and over the course of the years, that flip flops. And For us, last year, we actually lost 6 players off that roster. So over the course of the time, that happens. This year we had a little bit of a flux, and we've been discussing it, because I personally believe that every single year you should evaluate your program you're with. I think it's wise to look at that and make sure that you're in the right direction for your team personally. So for us, we're getting to the age group now where you're 12, 13. You're starting to more or less look and see what happens beyond that as far as travel ball is concerned, because your ultimate goal should be to develop these boys for high school. So for us, looking at it, it's like, well, are we in the right fit for what we believe is going to be giving them the best opportunity to develop for those high school teams? So logistically, most of our players are in that Fern Creek type of South End area where we've always been associated with, and Sting Field's in that area as well. But the indoor facility was on the opposite side of town in Crestwood. So it was difficult to always use that facility. And for us, we wanted to have more control over our own team. Plus, we wanted to have a good program that would help our boys from an exposure standpoint for when they get to the high school ranks. So KBC West is a branch off of KBC Lexington, which was owned and developed by Craig Snip, who actually is from Louisville, went to PRP, went to Kentucky. So he started that program, and then Jeff Quinlan, who owns KBC West, who also used to own KSA, the indoor facility in Mount Washington. So he kind of got together with Craig. They developed KBC West because the KBC name was starting to expand further west, and Louisville players were going to Lexington and vice versa. So it made sense to have like a branch per se. So they'd never did youth teams before. And what they kind of found was we want to have youth teams start so we can develop them along the way, and they can transition over these high school groups, because the high school groups are where you're going to find they're going to predominantly be connected with your college coaches. They're going to have relationships with those guys. Dan McDonald's kids actually played for Jeff's team when he was the travel ball team with KBC. So you would often find Dan pop up at their practices, and the coach for EKU, WKU, IUS, and all those players popping in to be able to observe practice, which is what it's all about. When at the end of the day, it's about getting exposure for high school and then getting exposure for colleges. So for us, the wanting to have sort of a fresh new start because of our team dynamics, and then also for what we feel would have been a better opportunity for our boys from a high school exposure moving into college exposure, this kind of makes sense.
So the timing kind of was right.
Yeah, it kind of worked out. Because we've looked at it for the last couple of years just to say, is this the right fit? Is this the right fit? Is this the right fit? And then the merger with the Vipers kind of prompted us to say, well, should we look for something more logistically that makes sense for all of our kids? Because we were just happened to be a travel team that most of the boys were located in the same general vicinity. So for us, we used Okolona a lot, which isn't a part of the program, but we were paying out of pocket for that. So ideally, when it comes, and the money involved with travel ball anyway. So we're looking at it from the point, like, do we have everything we need with what we're paying for? So that's why I say every single year you should evaluate it. And what I learned just from looking around town at different programs and talking to people that I know, because obviously a lot of guys I played ball with are involved with different programs and whatnot. It just kind of made sense that this makes the most sense for us. So everybody's got to make a choice for them. And talking to our parents, it just made more sense for us. We get a fresh start, fresh identity. We liked what they offered from the high school level of the branch of the program, and we're just going to be able to transition more easily moving forward from 12U into 13 to 14. This makes the most sense for us.
I like it, man. That's really cool. So when you talk about KBC West, you were able to bring in some new kids. Now, were the kids coming because of that brand, or how did you find some of these new players?
Yeah, a few of them. A lot of it's word of mouth. A lot of it is the success we had in the past. So a lot of that comes with being a Sting team, but a lot of that came also because we were actually a pretty good team. So for years we always had a pretty good reputation, and Sting helped that, but we also helped that with our own play. So for the last few years we've always been a pretty good team, and we were actually able to keep the nuts and bolts of that roster together. So over the course of the years, you start losing a player here, lose a player there, and before you know it, I think right now when we came to the team, of course, always felt like we were a new kid. Then you turn around and you said, well, Bryson's now one of the second or third oldest players on the team now. So you go through that years, and people start calling you when you hold a tryout and you put your name out there. And of course, the combination of us being Sting, but also the combination, and we've always been pretty good in our age group. That helps out. So
interesting. So how big is the difference? So we're a team that is a AA team that's on the cusp of trying to play some AAA ball. And we played some AAA teams and done well, played some AAA teams and not done so well. What do you think the biggest difference between your different levels. And obviously we kind of know your single A teams or your kind of your introductory, more of your rec style teams. The teams are just getting started. You may not have a ton of talent, so you're kind of pulling it together. And BJ Siegler had said once that single A is meant to be kind of a 1 year thing. Like if you don't move out of single A in 1 year, you got some issues. What do you think the biggest difference between AA and AAA is?
Probably from what I've seen is you have maybe 2 or 3 arms. You have 2 or 3 guys that can go out there on Sunday, and regardless of how you play Saturday, you go out there on Sunday, you put that kid in the mound, he's going to win. A lot of times it's 1 through 9, you have much more balance, whereas in AA you may have those 3 or 4 kids that carry your roster, but when you get down to 7, 8, 9 in the lineup, those are the kids that they don't hold you back, but they're the ones that are not able to make that jump. So for me, when I watch a AA team, and a lot of our players we have played AA and moved up. So it's not so much the entire talent, I would say, on the team, but you'll have 1 through 9 able to make that jump, and you've got 1 or 2 arms or maybe 3 arms, or every kid in your team can pitch adequately to play a whole tournament.
Makes sense.
So a AA team with a certain kid can go out there and probably win and beat a AAA team, because there's not, I don't think personally there's that much talent cap. Now there's some special kids out there. There's some special dudes.
Sure. But
1 through 9 on the starting lineup, or 1 through 10, or whatever you choose to play, that is where the difference is maybe the 8th player on a AAA roster may be the 5th hitter on a AA roster, for example. So that's kind of where you go there. And a lot of times for me, if you take a AA kid and put him around other kids that's like his talent, well, there's not much difference.
Yeah, I got you.
Yeah.
Well, talking about a special kid, I think you guys ran into one that we saw a ton last year. I mean, again, I've said it.
We've talked about him
I've been
before.
on record saying that he's the best kid in our age group. Is the Jalen? What's his last name, Rick? I'm blanking here.
Starts with a W.
Yeah, I'm blanking here, but I know this. But Jalen is absolute special talent.
Jalen is a game changer. So I saw him a couple weeks ago. We played in the inter squad, and that's the first time I've seen that kid since he tried out for us with Sting probably 2 years ago.
Right.
And I was talking to our old coach, Coach DJ, about it. And I was like, there's no way that's the same kid. There's no way, because I think he was just getting in there, like really playing baseball at that point.
Yeah.
And I remember working him out in the mound. I remember watching him hit. And I was like, he's got a good swing. He just doesn't really know what he's doing yet.
Yeah.
And then he shows up a couple of weeks ago when I was watching him. I was like, who's Shaq walking in there?
And then he's so much bigger.
He's
than
just a major league player playing with a bunch of travel.
And Jason's got a kid that's bigger than everybody else too.
Yeah,
so when you're seeing this kid tower,
his first at bat, he hit one about 310 into the trees, and it's one of those birth certificate kids. He's the one that comes to the field, and I goes, no, he's not. He's not. And then we played him again this past weekend, and we're playing the semifinals against the Bulls, an already really good team, and then he's on the team, and then he hits one over the eye drop in center field onto the side of the hill at E-Town, which is about 300 feet, and you just sit back and go, there's just not much we can do with him.
Yeah.
There's not much you can do with the kid. So
you could intentionally walk
him.
Hey.
Yeah, exactly.
4 times in a row.
Well,
we don't pitch to him.
I would have loved to walk him, but you have another special player in Jackson White right behind him, who also hit a home run that game. Yep. So it's like, well, I guess I can walk both of those guys and then get to the next guy that's probably their 3rd best player on the team. So you're playing something like that. That's when you get to a
and it's not like he's slow, so he's probably going to go take a couple bases on you when you intentionally walk in too. So it's a double-edged sword.
It's a tough beat.
Yeah, they're special players. I mean, that's the.
All right. So one of the questions I had come through one of our different podcasts, somebody made a comment, and the question was, look, we're kind of new to the travel ball scene. We got a kid that's pretty good. What should we be looking for in a program? So, Jason, in your opinion, when you're shopping a program and you're trying to figure out what travel ball team am I going to invest my money in, invest my time in, what are the key factors you're looking for?
If you're a player or a team?
Player.
So
parent and a player. If you're looking to join a certain organization, and let's assume they're good enough, to play for pretty much anybody they want to play for, what should you be looking for?
I'm looking for a team where the kid can play an integral role. Like if I'm going to a team, I don't want to go on there as a role player.
Yep.
I want my boy, my player, to be an integral part of the team where he's going to go and he's going to play. Now, I think that's the most crucial part of searching for a program is you're going to go to a team, but are you going to play? Are you going to develop? You know, all the practice time, no matter how good that team is, if you're not playing a good role in that team, you're not going to develop. And I've told kids that on our team that you're a great kid, you're a great family, but you're not going to play a pivotal role. I feel bad keeping you back because if you can't go somewhere where you're going to play 95% of the games and you're going to go somewhere that's got 13, 14, 15 kids and you're not the kid playing center field, shortstop, second base, catcher, or pitcher, then you may want to reevaluate where you're going. So you're playing one of those spots. You had Coach Brown from Strike on a while back, and he said it's 100% accurate. If you're at this age where you're supposed to be developing for the next level, which is high school, you want to play in that middle of the field range or be able to play there. So if you're a third baseman or you're a lefty first baseman, can you also pitch? And you should. So we make all of our kids pitch. I've got 10 kids. All of them pitch. So we work practice where I don't put my outfielders in outfield only. I want to put my infielders in the infield only. And every single kid pitches. I got 4 or 5 kids that can catch, because when they get to high school, their coach is going to ask them, where do you play? And I want my players to say anywhere.
Yep.
And that's 100% true.
We've preached that. We've preached that. And then the other thing that we're preaching right now, and this is going to lead me to my next question, is we're trying to preach being a good teammate and preaching the type of attitudes that you need to have on the field. Now, we've let a lot of things go in the past because kids are kids, right? And, they're going to get upset about certain things. We understand that. But being 12 years old now, there's certain ways you're going to have to act on the field. You never know who's watching. You never know which high school coach may be sitting there and evaluating you as not only as a player, but how is he as a teammate? How does he react when he strikes out? How does he react when he doesn't do well in the field? What's your opinion on that? How do you handle a kid that maybe doesn't have the best attitude on the field?
Man, it's a beast. It is an absolute beast, because it's a lot of times like you try to have certain discipline factors, and at the end of the day, emotions are something that you can't control sometimes.
Right.
And if you talk to Coach Lewis on our team, and you have a spout where you cry, he's going to tell you to go out of the dugout and go sit next to your mom. And the moms, if you have certain moms like we do, if you come out of the dugout crying, they're going to say, "Oh no, well, you better get your ass back in there, and you're not going to embarrass me today." But emotions are so tough, because I think there's a time that's going to click with most of these boys where the emotions of like tears and sadness turn into frustration, and tears turns into throwing your helmet. And I like, from my experience, just from my kid, I would love for him to show some sort of emotion to tell me he's frustrated, because he's so even keel,
right,
that I don't know if getting out pisses him off sometimes. Right. So that's the hard part.
That's a good point but Bryson's a little bit different.
Yeah, but that's where you're dealing with kids of all kinds of different issues. So it's like some kids get upset, and they're at the point where they're so mad they cry, or they're so upset that they cry. It's probably the hardest thing to deal with youth sports in general. It's like, how do you teach, or how do you motivate enough to where they're not affected by their emotions, because they just don't understand how that takes them out of the game.
Yep.
And that's the hardest thing to do. How we address it is we try to have that hard line and tell them, like, if you can't control your emotions, then you can't play. Because if you make one mistake and it causes an emotion, then it's going to cause another mistake. And we try to teach them that and show them that in examples. But ultimately, I don't carry a lot of players for that reason, because I want my kids to play 95% of the game. So I don't have a bench there saying, "Hey, you go in for him because he's crying."
Right.
So
you kind of have to.
Yeah, you said you got 10 kids. I mean,
I got 10 kids.
Just takes one kid crying.
Yep. I don't have a kid sitting there waiting for you to cry. So I try to take them, and it depends on how kids can be talked to. I think a good thing for a coach is to learn what kids can you talk to in what certain way.
Yep.
So some of them need to have tough love. Some of them need to be brought to a side and not embarrassed in front of the rest of the kids when they're having these moments. And you have to turn it into a teaching moment somehow.
Yep.
Because most of them just need to calm down. And that's the hard part with it. There are the rarity kids that will cry at a moment's notice on every single bad wind that blows our way. And those are the hardest ones to deal with, because you really just don't know how to reach them.
Yep.
And that's the hardest part for a coach.
It's funny. So I had a conversation with Rick Arnold, and Rick was telling me there's a kid that got drafted this year, and it's not Dalen. But he, at 12 years old, was a very emotional kid and would cry when he struck out. And basically the way Rick dealt with it, because Rick was his coach at that time, and Rick basically said, "Look, the next time you freak out, I'm not going to yell at you, but you're going to the parking lot." And it happened. And he was his best player, but he sent him to the parking lot, and he said nobody on the team ever did it again.
That's a good example. Yeah, I have a good story in high school about a guy that always had emotional outbursts, and we were playing a game, and Coach Burns literally yelled across the third base to get off the field and leave. And if you know where Southern's field is, the parking lot's kind of up to left field.
Yep.
And he had gotten his car. At this point, we were driving, obviously. At this point, he'd gotten his car and drove over to the field to watch the game from his car at the top of the hill. And Coach Burns stopped the game, turned around, pointed to him, and said, "Get the hell out of here!"
Oh, really?
And he
didn't even want. He didn't want him there.
He peeled.
Go home.
He peeled out and Dukes of Hazzard out of the park. It was the most embarrassing. I couldn't imagine how embarrassing that was. But yeah, that kind of set the tempo. But it was a situation where nobody else had emotional outbursts like that, but he had to set an example, and it didn't work because he kept doing it. But I mean,
gotcha.
Usually for guys like that,
well,
worked for everybody
when
else.
You're at that age, because you're talking high school at that point.
Absolutely high school. Yeah.
So if you're not through it at that point, you're probably not gonna get through it.
That's why we're trying to address it now.
Yeah,
right.
So that doesn't happen.
But it's different when it's a sports thing. But when you're emotional in general outside of playing the game, that makes it really tough. That's just who you are.
Yeah,
I mean, that's when it's the hardest to break, because it's like you have the kids that get frustrated because they're frustrated with their performance, but when they go home, they're even killed. They're nights and stuff, and but when they get in the field, they can't handle failure, and this is the wrong sport to play if you can't handle that.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the hardest ones to fix, and you're trying to quote fix them, but you're trying to figure out how can I reach them. That's the hardest part.
For me, what's the hardest part too, and I'll admit this because I'm pretty self-aware with it, is I'm learning how to deal with it as a coach as we're going. It's not something that I've coached youth sports for a lot of years, but like you said, dealing with the failure and dealing with the baseball piece of it, I'm trying to learn as a coach how to best interact with these certain situations. And I think you hit the nail on the head where you said you got to know what kid can take what kid you got to pull to the side, what kid you can say something to in front of the other team to kind of make it a teaching moment. And I'm still trying to kind of figure out the right way to do all that. And obviously I don't make all the right decisions, but at the same time, I think people know, like you and I, Jason, these kids' best interests is all we really care about.
Yeah, I think that's myself. I'm by no means perfect at it, and you've heard me yell at my kid at basketball. And so I'm probably harder on my kid than probably any other kid, and that's because I expect so much more out of him. So it's tough for me.
The same way.
When you're a coach and you're also a dad, that's the line that's so hard to toe, because it's like, I know what you can do, and you're not listening. You have no excuse because you're the damn coach's kid. So it's so hard. And in basketball, it's like I got to sit there and try to bite my tongue because I don't want to say anything, and I'm here in the second quarter of a basketball game. Next thing you know, I'm embarrassing myself. So, and that's the way I'm with most of my boys on our KBC team now. It's like they know I have their best interest, and when I'm yelling at them, they know I'm not doing it to criticize them. I'm trying to hold them to a certain standard. And they know that, and their parents know that. They know I have their best interest at heart, but even I get emotional as a coach because I expect so much out of them.
Same. I'm in the same exact boat. And I think with my son, sometimes I yell at him a little bit more than I do the other kids because I can't yell at the other kids that way. Yeah. And I need to kind of set that example, and I need people to understand.
Need everybody else to hear that.
Hey, I don't want you striking out looking, so I'm going to make an example out of him because I don't want the other kids to do it.
Well, and this is to how I was taught as well. I probably had two of the most intense people growing up coaching. Coach Burns at Southern, who is probably the greatest coach I ever had, and then Coach Cox at Spalding. Two no-nonsense guys. Coach Burns, if he were coaching today the way we were coached when I was in high school, he wouldn't have a job. Just because of the society we live in today, you can't get in a kid's face and spit the way he used to. But I was an extremely immature kid. It's probably very surprising for people that know me that I was extremely immature. If I didn't have that, I wouldn't have played college. Yeah. And when I was in college, if I didn't have a guy like Coach Cox, I wouldn't have been any good. Yeah. And I was still a guy that cut corners, and I was immature. And there are things you go back and wish you can fix. But if I didn't have those two guys, I wouldn't have amounted to anything.
Interesting.
I think part of that comes out in me when I coach because there's a certain intensity level that I find myself coaching, and every once in a while I'll drive home going, why am I like this? Because I wasn't like this when I played. I was the guy that would hid behind somebody else because I'm like, I don't want to run. Yeah. So when I'm talking to kids, it's almost like I'm trying to make sure they don't make the same mistakes that I made.
I'm with you, man.
And I find myself doing it a lot. Like I'm literally doing what Coach Burns did to the point where I had Coach Burns come out and talk to our kids. I'm like, if it worked for me, sure to God it's going to work for them. Yeah. But like I said, that you could not do back in the day.
Oh yeah.
It's a different society.
Different times.
It's totally different.
So I got a story when I was at St. X. This guy named Coach Cooper. He had a state championship ring with an X. And he turned this thing around, and he would smack me in the back of my head. I mean, and I would bleed for the rest of the day, but nothing was ever said. I mean, that was okay. I mean, it's like
you didn't go home and cry to mom and dad.
My dad would have been like, "Well, what did you do?
Yeah.
You deserved it."
Yeah.
So, but I mean, that would have happened today. Oh, there's no telling.
Be on the news,
jailed and fired and everything else.
I mean, there's no telling. All right, so you have 10. I've had a lot of coaches say, hey, you should keep your age. So when you're 10, you keep 10. When you're 11, you keep 11. When you're 12, you keep 12. And then you get to 13, you get into POs. And 14, you get into POs. I hear a little bit of that, but it seems like you're going the opposite direction with this 10. Is it because you haven't found the right kid?
Well, I'm going to have 11. I haven't found that right mix yet. So that's the downside when you play AAA major, level ball is that takes a good fit to be able to play that level. And there's a different level of commitment when you play that level. And you want to make sure you have a kid that's able to play. And I don't ever take a kid and just work him out once and pick him up.
Yep.
I make him work out with us several different times because I want to make sure what is asked of him. Plus, he can play that level because the worst thing you can do is bring him up and he's not ready.
Yep.
Or he's not as good or not as good that you might think he was to play that level. Because then at that point, you're just doing the kid some injustice by bringing him up and putting him against competition that he can't hang with yet.
Yep.
Yeah.
So carrying 10 right now, I don't think I'm going to go more than 11 for mainly the reason is I don't want anybody that's not going to play.
Right.
And I'm not a coach that's going to use a lot of substitutions.
Mm-hmm.
I want my kids because they're playing to develop. I want the players on our team to play 95% of the time. And if I carry 12, somebody's sitting because I'm not going to bat ever more than 10.
Yeah.
I want my kids to play. Therefore, if you're batting in the one hole, the more kids I put at the bottom of the lineup, just from basic baseball, you're putting more outs in there. And there's so many games in the past when you're playing 11 or playing 12, our better players or the players that are starting only got 1 or 2 at-bats.
Yeah.
That defeats the purpose for me.
I get that.
Plus, I want every kid, like I said, to be able to pitch. Now, I understand carrying 12 or 13 when you get older because kids will eventually develop into pitcher only, but
Right.
that's going to happen in high school. It shouldn't happen before you get there.
I agree. You need to be an athlete until you get to high school.
Absolutely. And every kid should play every position. So I shouldn't have a problem. And at this level of travel ball with the money involved, you don't have to worry about, well, I've only got 9 kids this week because I got 2 that just, they're doing a math camp somewhere. That doesn't happen. I mean, last year we played, 12 tournaments, and I think we were missing kids one time.
Right.
And it was 2 kids taking vacation on spring
Right,
break. That's
right.
it. Every kid's always there.
They're paying decent
committed.
money to be a part.
Yeah.
So, the parents are typically committed and the kids are there.
Absolutely. So, if I have 12 and I'm sitting here deciding which kids I don't want to start or want to sit, you're just bringing in dissension into your team at that point because you're always picking which 2 kids am I not going to play because I'm not going to bat 12. I'm not a believer in batting 12 because it just takes away at bats. And if you're going against the nature of baseball if you're batting more because you're just putting more outs in the
Now,
lineup.
are you going to bat 10 or are you going to bat 9 or what are you going to bat when you have 11?
I like batting 10 because it gives me the ability to sub in and out defensively.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I do a lot of times.
Mhm.
If we're struggling offensively, I will bat 9. So when I want to get my players that are trying to struggling, I want to get more at bats for them to see the more opportunities. When you bat 9, they're going to bat more often. My leadoff's going to bat more often. My 2, my 3, my 4, they're going to bat more often the less kids I play. If I bat 10, it gives me the ability, especially in a hot day, to give my catcher an inning break or to give my center fielder an inning break.
Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You're playing a Saturday, you're playing 3 games on Sunday or 4 games on Sunday. You need to have fresh legs. If you have a pitching setup, it gives you the ability to bring that guy in the dugout, let him sit there, catch his breath, put him on the mound the next inning. So that works into your strategy. I see zero strategy in batting 11 or batting 12 unless you're just trying to be fair because you're taking away at bats from the guy batting in the 1 hole, in the 2 hole, in the 3 hole. You're batting those guys there for a reason because you believe they can hit.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody in baseball can get 2 at-bats and expect to be consistently successful if you only see the guy once, see the guy twice. Like, what are you attempting to do by putting more outs? Because if you put 12 guys in there, averages will bear out. They're going to get out most of the time.
Yep.
The more kids you put in there, the more guys are going to get out. Well, I want the kid to bat 3 times, so his 300 or 400 average bears out. Now he's going to get a hit for me versus might go 0 for 2. That's not a bad
All
game.
right. Well, I'm with you. So how do you now you don't have 11 yet, but when you have 11, how are you going to deal with that 11th kid? So you're going to bat 10. So you're just going to sub him in at some point, or how are you going to deal with that?
Yeah, I sub, but I use it based on the situation. There is a perfectly acceptable end-game result where somebody don't play. You have to be able to accept that. There is a possibility that the
kid doesn't get in at all.
The kid doesn't get it all. The kid doesn't get in, and you don't just force a kid in the game.
How do you communicate to the parents that beforehand?
Well, they understand this is travel ball, and they're not going to be the kid eventually that's starting that I'm just taking out for the hell of it because I want to get Johnny an inning.
I gotcha. Makes sense. I think it's a communication thing, honestly.
Absolutely.
I think the parents need to know that going in, and the ones that aren't okay with that need to kind of know that, hey, my kid may be a kid that doesn't play. So they know that the grandparents may have paid to get in, and aunts and uncles and whatever may have paid their $15 to get in and watch that day, and the kid may not get in the game.
Well, look, we were in Destin last year, and I set my own son. He set 2 games. And so
Two full games
in a row. So he didn't play the whole day, and he was struggling. And there's a reason why he didn't play.
Mm-hmm.
And I took him out, and we won a game, and everybody else progressed. I didn't see any reason to put him back in yet. There wasn't an opportunity in the game to put him in where the situation called for me to sub him in. We won the game fairly easily. There wasn't a reason or an opportunity to say, you're better in this position than the player I have starting. So our parents on our team understand that there's a reason we're playing the game the way we're playing the game. Rec ball, you're required to play the kid, 2 innings and bat at one time. This is not rec ball.
Right.
So chances are when you have 11 players and they're all playing equally, there probably is a rotation basis that you have going on, but 9 times out of 10, there's probably a reason why you set that kid. He's either struggling or he didn't have a good game, but he's always ready to play.
Interesting.
So, I mean, we treat it just like we would treat high school ball. I mean, again, this is about developing them for high school. No kid in high school ever gets put in the game just for the hell of it.
Yeah.
And no kid in college is going to play.
Well, and especially in a competitive program.
Absolutely. So they have to understand, if you want to be that kid that never sits, produce. Mm-hmm. And that gets them ready for the next level. If they can't handle that, then they're probably playing a level that's probably too high for them.
It's competition, right?
Maybe they can go play middle school ball. Right?
Absolutely.
All right, so let's talk about middle school ball. So Jalen Spalding was on last week, and he made the comment that travel ball is preparing kids for middle school ball. How do you respond to that?
I mean, I could respect that opinion. I personally would disagree, just because middle school ball is not that prevalent. It's not that every school has. I mean, we don't have that option at our school. So
at all.
Yeah, we don't have the option. But if middle school ball had more structure, I could buy that. But I mean, what do they play, like 8 games, and some of them don't even practice.
Right.
So if anything, like I told a parent that was trying out for us, I'm like, I'll be honest with you, our teams and our competition's probably better than you're going to play in high school. Middle school ball, in a lot of senses for a lot of schools, is more of a social thing, because they're playing with kids they may play against. And it's fun.
Yeah,
right. It's like going to a intramural game or something, more or less. So some of these seasons of middle school ball, you play 6 or 7 games, then you're done. Now, some are more competitive than others.
Right.
And
some have pretty good programs.
Right. And those players that you have as instance, then obviously that may take priority over your travel ball team. But in my opinion, especially at like the AAA level, most of those teams are better than those middle school teams, and you're going to play in better competition.
That's kind of where his take on that surprised me, because that's kind of where I fell in this. Now, that is part of me not having a middle school ball option for my kids.
Right.
So,
I think if there was more teams prevalent and it was a set schedule in a league like it is for basketball, it'd be different. But baseball's not that sport.
All right. So you were a pitcher in college and a pitcher in professional ball and independent league. What are you doing to develop your pitchers? What's the most important thing you should be doing at 12 years old?
Consistency, just building consistency over and over again. So we start every single practice. The first thing we do is pitching. That's the very first thing we do. So we do everything from throwing hockey pucks on our knees to the same drills, because we're trying to build repetition over and over and over and over. So when we get in the game, mechanics is not much the issue. Right now, we're going through an issue where I've got kids that can throw strikes, and I've got kids that can't throw strikes. But the ones that can't throw strikes, it isn't anything mechanical. It's the 6 inches between their ears that are preventing them from throwing strikes.
Yep.
And that's the hardest thing to teach.
Yep.
Because it's the mental approach to the game. How you try to combat that is by building consistency where it's second nature when they get up there, and they don't have to do anything but just let it fly. And that's the hardest thing for even my son. The hardest thing for him is, and the most frustrating thing is, I have a kid in our team now that has ungodly talent and an ungodly arm. Right. But when he gets on the mound, he overdoes it and becomes emotionally frustrated very quickly when he struggles. And you can't do that as a pitcher. So yesterday we get to practice early, and we just simply go to the mound, and I said, I'm not going to do anything mechanical with you. All I want you to do is I'm going to go sit on that bucket behind the plate, and I want you to just throw me 10 strikes. He threw 10 strikes right down the damn middle. I said, lesson over. We're not going to sit here and spend a half an hour on leg stride and how far you striding out and bend your back and all the mechanical things we teach you from a baseline point of view, because you do that just fine. You just showed me that if you relax and you don't force it,
you can throw strikes.
You blast them right down the damn middle. And as hard as you throw, nobody's going to hit that at our level. Nobody's going to hit that. And you did that effortlessly.
Yeah, you don't have to throw as hard as you possibly can. You just need to throw it,
Sometimes you want to just say, take your gloves off, and I'm going to bring a bunch of therapy couches out there, and we're just going to do an hour of therapy, because most of you guys just need to understand that you have to just trust it and let it play. So that's a big word for us in practice, is trust it. Not just our pitching, but our hitting and our defensive players. They have talent.
Yep.
The hardest thing to do is teach confidence. That's the hardest thing. And that's honestly some of the big separation between the levels as well, is I don't want to say cockiness, but the players that are playing at a higher level believe in themselves a little bit more, so they're able to play and let it fly more. So we've had a couple kids come out there where I've watched them play for their AA team, And I've invited them out to work out with us to see if there's a potential there to maybe recruit them or they want to come play at a higher level because they need to get challenged more.
Right.
And they come out and work out with us, and they're tentative.
Right.
And they run slower, and you can tell they're not comfortable. Therefore, they're not aggressive. Therefore, they don't give me 100%.
Gotcha.
And the hardest thing to do with that is say, I know you can play, but you have to have confidence in yourself to come out here and show all these other boys that why you're here.
You belong.
You belong here, and your talent belongs you here. But right now, your confidence is holding you back because you're nervous, you're scared. And that's what happens with pitchers on the mound. A lot of times they'll get on that mound, and, for example, you're playing a AAA team, and you're nervous, and you're beat before you throw the first pitch. Next thing you know, you've either walked 6 guys in a row or you've thrown 4 balls in a row, and if you're in practice, you never show that. We're at that point right now with our team. You know, as talented as our pitchers are, I got kids that throw 70% strikes, and I got kids that can't find the zone. But in practice, flawless. So it's mental. That's the hardest thing to teach a kid because confidence is something they gain from being comfortable.
Well, can you teach it? I mean, how do you?
It's very difficult to teach. That's the hardest thing to do. They need success. They need repetition, and they need to be sometimes just thrown to the wolves. And this goes back to the conversation we had earlier as far as how do you reach some kids.
Right.
Some kids, you put them out there and say, you're going to pitch. And if
I'm not taking you out.
If you walk 12 batters, you're going to walk 12 batters. Suck it up.
You're going to figure it out.
Yep. Suck it up. Get over it. Figure it out. And some kids need that. Some kids need to use like the technical analytical route because they feel like they can process it better if you're coaching them through it. It just depends on what makes them comfortable. And that's the hardest part to teaching, like especially pitching, because you have the ball every play.
You're in control.
Hitting sometimes you take a bad swing, get lucky.
Right, sure.
That happens. And then all of a sudden the seams, all of a sudden the floodwaters open. All of a sudden you just rip 5 pitches wrong. All it took was that one good contact.
Sure.
And it could have been a crappy swing.
Sure.
But all you need to do is fill that ball that one time.
See that ball get hit.
Pitching is so much different because you don't accidentally just throw a strike, right? I mean,
sure.
You need it. Sometimes you'll face a team that's maybe a little more aggressive and they're swinging at balls. That helps out sometimes. But ultimately, the hardest part about pitching is the more you struggle, the more a good team's going to say,
hey, we ain't swinging.
Take it. Just take it and watch that kid melt down.
Yeah, we've seen a little bit of that in our own instances here a little bit lately. Man, that's interesting. You know, so I played golf professionally, and it seemed to me the better golfers were the more of the cockiest guys. It's like it's the more cocky and the more kind of jerk you were, typically you were the better player.
That's the same thing in baseball. And that's sports in general. It's just being a competitor. Like you mentally have to win the battle before you even start it. And that's pitching. Like if you have that ball and you have any doubt in your head, you're probably going to get beat. The hardest part about baseball, I realize, even though you're a pitcher and you're kind of alone out there, you do have 8 dudes behind you that are waiting to fill the ball, but you have to let them hit it.
Right. Absolutely.
That's the hardest part about pitching.
Yeah, you have to let them hit it, and you have to put it in the zone where they're actually going to swing.
Now, to be fair, I was horrible at that. So, you know, from a pitching standpoint, I walked more batters than anybody on my team. I hit more. Well, I didn't hit more batters, but I hit a lot of batters. But for different reasons where I didn't hold anything back. Like if I walked guys, I didn't leave anything out there. I just had no control. So, man, I let it fly. I threw hard, and that happens as well. But there's success that comes with that as well every once in a while as well. I mean, by letting it fly. The worst thing is when the bad results happen and you didn't let it fly.
Right.
That's what I talk about with a lot of our guys. I'm like, you're better than that, and you're holding back. And when you hold back, there's no way you can throw strikes. There's no way. You throw it high, you throw it low. Me and Coach Lewis were talking last game. It's like I think we lead the tournament in how many balls go 40 feet, or how many balls hit the backstop. And that's mental. There's no mechanical flaw that's going to make a kid throw a 40-foot fastball. That's mental, and that's the hardest thing to teach. I didn't have quite that problem, but throwing strikes is the most hardest part about pitching because it's really the only thing that matters. And it's the hardest thing to teach from a mental standpoint.
And, look, you don't want to see a kid up there just guiding it either, you know?
Well, yeah, I mean, because you go through all these programs and you put all the work in. At the end of the day, your brain keeps you from performing. And that's the hardest part is to know, especially at our age, you don't want to let a kid struggle because you don't want the game to get away, but you also don't want to have them thinking, well, as soon as I throw 4 balls, he's going to yank me. He's going to yank me. So you also have to have that fine line on when is that mark where you think it's too soon, or is he going to come out of it? Is he not? Because you played against teams before. You walk one guy, yanks him out. And that kid ends up throwing 5 innings in the weekend, but he never pitched more than 1 inning because as soon as he walks somebody, he's yanking him.
He's coming out.
And
sure.
you have to give the kids a chance to battle. And that's the hard part as well. That's why I don't carry a lot of players either. I'm like, you might be in a slump, but look, I got confidence in you because we ain't got nobody else.
So do you do that on a Saturday, though, or do you do that in a league play game? Because, look, I kind of like this thought of, hey, you walk 12 guys, we're still rolling with you. You're just going to have to figure it out.
Well, I think you throw the guys on Saturday that have that teeter-totter back that may be coming onto something, but they need to be able to leave them out there a little bit longer. You always save your best guys for Sunday. Sunday's the only thing that matters. I mean, we just went through this with this past weekend. I mean, we played Indiana Bulls, and Shane's team was by far the best team in it, but misfortune on Saturday led him to go 0-2. So he lost 2 one-run games. They played good games, but the other teams against them probably threw their better arms because they're playing the Bulls. They want to beat them. So they go 0-2, come out on Sunday, win 3 straight games because they saved all those top dog arms for Sunday, mowed right through it. So there's a difference there. But so Saturday, you want to give guys opportunities. Sunday, you want to make sure you play more games. But that's just, I mean, I tell you, that's more or less common sense with how we do these things. But Saturday, at the end of the day, it matters, but it doesn't matter from the standpoint as you can recover from that. So you want to give the guys chances on Saturday, prove themselves on Saturday before you move them over to Sunday.
Yeah, Saturday just means the seeding. I mean, that matters some, but obviously
it matters
because
you got to play that extra game.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, it's huge.
You got to use that extra pitcher.
Yeah, and I'm not saying you want to go out there and throw somebody that's never thrown before. You want to work them in the right situation, but kids earn starts through practice. I mean, they earn opportunities though through practice, and hopefully you're throwing them live during the week, maybe give them an inning and say, all right, let's build off that and give you a start on Saturday. They do well there, they get the next Saturday, and before you know it, they're a Sunday starter. So that's kind of how you have to build confidence.
I gotcha. I like that. All right, so we're going through something right now where we're trying to figure out fundraising. It's not something we've done a whole lot of. It's kind of a new world for us, but have you dabbled into the fundraising world at all in travel ball?
We've gotten a little bit into it. So we're fortunate because we have a lot of parents with a lot of connections, and we've been able to ascertain a lot of sponsorships. And sponsorships are the easiest way because they're just
I saw that, but I haven't seen anybody do this yet.
Yeah.
So the sponsorship thing's interesting to me because you're actually having like companies sponsor the team or a kid even?
Well, the kid that obtains the sponsorship goes towards his player fee, but we offer different things for those sponsorships. At the end of the day, most places that are sponsoring stuff like us, they're using it for a tax write-off. I mean, that's what they're using it for. They're using it for a tax write-off. Either they're spending it on, they're going to classify it as marketing, and it's not necessarily like a charitable donation write-off, but they're using it for marketing.
Okay.
And it's incremental for them because they're trying to help out a player that they know or a parent that they know, and they're working it that way.
What do they get for that?
So we have obviously all our social media. We have all the photo banners and things like that you're going to put their logo on essentially, and that's pretty much all they really get. And so they're not doing it necessarily thinking that, well, if I place this ad, I'm going to get all this return business.
Yeah.
That's not why they're doing it.
Yeah.
So that's what they're going to use it as marketing per se, but we don't ask for a ton of money either. So the only fundraiser we did is we did one of the liquor raffles. We just did that. So we have all the parents go out and they buy 2 or 3 things of different types of alcohol or whatever. No different than guys do. Some of them do a gun raffle. Some of them do alcohol raffles. They just get a bunch of donations together and just raffle it off.
Yeah, I saw that. How'd you do with that?
We did about $3,000 as a team.
You did fantastic.
So, yeah, we did great. That was a really good one. So
now I do think there is some difference on how you do your tickets. We're going to try one. We're going to do $20 for one, 3 gets for 50, and then 8 for 100.
Yeah, so I think it just for me, I was like common sense wise. If I'm buying a ticket, I'm not going to buy just one.
Okay.
So I want to make it to where if you're going to participate, most of the time, it's funny too because we have the EMS tickets for Ascension going right now too. So we're hitting up the same damn people over and over, which is the hardest part.
Sure.
So for me, I want to give them the most bang for their buck. If I'm going to give a kid $20 or a donation, like I'm not going to give you $5. Like, but what can I get if I give you 20 to make it worth my while?
Right.
So I'm not going to hit you up a lot. So versus me going to you for $1 here, candy bar, $1 there, I'm going to try to create a bigger nut.
Okay.
So for us, we did 1 for 5, we did 6 for 1 for 5, 5 for 20, and then 15 for 50. Which obviously, if you just do the math, I mean, the $50 one makes the most sense, right? So we got quite a bit of those, and some parents, fundraising is about the parents. If the parents don't want to do it, they're not going to do it.
They're not going to do it.
They're not
right.
going to do it.
You got to be in on it as a parent.
And the hard part with fundraising at our age is the kids are really no help when it comes to
right.
stuff.
Yeah, they're not knocking on doors.
No,
Buy my raffle.
Right. You can't expect that. I mean,
yeah, they're not really
they're not selling world's finest chocolate bars.
And you can't have them out there with liquor bottles saying, "Hey, you want to buy this chance?"
Right. So kids promote liquor.
I mean, most of the time you're hitting up people that you know. I mean, most and that's the hard part about fundraisers. Unless you're one of those groups where you go work like the Louisville game or the Derby or something like that, and then you can put a lot of effort into like 2 days and maximize it. I think the key to fundraising is for me personally as a parent, I'm not going to do all the nitpick stuff. Like I'll bust my ass 1 or 2 times, make as much money as I can, and I got to pay for the rest. And that's kind of our philosophy towards it. Like I'm not going to do 10 fundraisers. We'll do 2 or 3 that are easier sells because the people that are participating get the most bang for their buck.
Got it.
That's kind of how we do it.
I like that. I think it makes sense. All right. So what is your favorite drill that you'll run into practice?
Favorite drill. So let me think here. All right, so it kind of goes along with our philosophy because I don't like drill. The worst thing ever, the one thing I hate more than anything is the coach that hits ground balls to shortstop and they got 1 kid up and there's 10 kids standing behind that kid and it's one at a time. I can't stand those drills.
I agreed.
I also can't stand the drills where you separate players into positions. I like to get the most out of the drills. I try to have drills that are created to make players do multiple things, keep the most players involved at one time. So, for example, we do something called chain defense. So we're trying to incorporate several different positions at one time. So I'll have my catchers behind home plate. I'll have a group of kids, let's say 3 kids on the mound. I'll have 3 kids at second base. I'll have 3 or 4 kids in shallow right field or right center field, and I'll have a group at the 4-hole.
Okay.
So that's a lot of kids. Don't you only have 10 kids?
Well, 3 kids. What is that? 3, 4, 6, 7. I'm not doing math, Rick. So I have a couple kids at each those spots. So it starts off with the pitcher. I got the kids on the mound. They're going to work on their slide step. They're going to throw a slide step pitch to my catcher. My catcher is working on his pop time. He throws a strike down to second base. I'm working on throwing steals out. Kid at second base is working on tags. He catches the ball, works on tags because it's probably the most underrated aspect of Little League ball is I cannot stand how many balls our catcher will throw somebody out and they can't catch the damn ball at second base.
Oh, they're holding the glove this feet much off the ground.
Yeah. No. So it's another whole show there probably.
Yeah.
But so the guy at second base catches it, applies a tag, turns around, throws a fly ball or a ground ball to the group in right center field. So they're working on catching a fly ball, charging a ground ball. They're working on coming up, throwing the ball home. So they're throwing the ball to my cut man. My cut man's working on relays. So he's catching the ball, firing to the catcher. Catcher gets the ball, throws the ball to the next pitcher. So in that one little drill with one ball, we're working on.
I haven't heard this one. I like this.
Yeah, slide steps for my pitchers. My catcher working on her pop times. My infielder's working on catching tags. Outfielder's working on fly balls and ground balls. And then my relay man working on obviously catch and release. But what happens is the pitcher will go from pitching to second base. Second base goes from second base to outfield. So when he makes that throw, he's jogging to the outfield. Outfield catches the ball. He's jogging to the relay guy. Relay guy makes the relay. He's going to the pitching spot. So they keep rotating.
Gotcha.
So every single kid, when he goes to this drill a couple times.
You keep the catcher there?
Yeah, catcher stays there because he's working on pops. Mm-hmm. So every once in a while, I've got 3 or 4 catchers. So I'll send the catcher out there and say, you go out there, do the drill, and then come back to me.
Okay.
So I'll include the catcher in the drill, but I also want him working on pops because catching's probably the most neglected spot on the field because you never just have isolated position-only practices.
Right.
So catching is a really tough position because if they're either – it's hard to find a drill or find time to practice where the catcher gets to work on catching. That's the hardest part.
Right.
So we have to figure out in our
drills. It's only a couple kids.
Right. It's only a couple kids, and unless you break out into sections, which we do that quite a bit, and I'll try to pull the catchers aside to work on stuff like blocking. Mm-hmm. But you really have to make a conscious effort of what's everybody else doing if my catcher's working on blocking. So it's difficult. So, but I want every kid in that drill to work on slide steps because they all pitch, tags, fielding ground balls, fielding fly balls, quick hand relay, and then transition over. So I try to get all that done in one little drill. So in 10 minutes, I've accomplished all that. So most of our drills utilize that type of movement, that type of speed, that type of pressure, where they're doing multiple positions in one drill.
Got it.
So
the chain defense drill. This might be my favorite one yet, Rick.
It's a new one to me.
I love it, man.
I'll sell it to you for a small fee.
This was I'm telling you, man. You get a lot of guys
just put
involved.
It out there for everybody.
Yeah. So you just let everybody know your secret on that one.
Sell it now.
That one. Hey, I love the chain defense drill. I think that's awesome. I'm all in on that.
The kids like it because they move around. They don't get to stand still. So it's also a good conditioning drill because they're jogging to each position as well. So
Speaking of your catcher, man.
Good
Lord, that kid's a stud. I don't know. Now look, I've seen a lot of kids who can catch, can throw and do kind of the normal things, but this kid is like next level on using his body.
Well, he's benefited from always playing up. So he's always played up, and he's seen the kids at an older level, and he's not physically much bigger than the average 12-year-old.
Right.
But he's always played up in a division. That's helped him because he's developed. He's been around kids that are probably a little longer line physically developed than him. So he's always had to play harder. He's always had to practice more. But yeah, he's got a lot of just natural. He's got what I tell my coaches, like they got it. Like he has the baseball. Like you could tell when he moves. He's not the quickest guy, but he looks like an awesome base runner. Like. He's not going to be a 4-flat 40 or anything, but the kid can fly as far as like moving his feet, moving his hands. Some kids get that development early where you watch him play and it's like he's got it. Like you can't be taught that. Like you just naturally have those types of movements, those instincts, your natural fast hands. And it's always I played college ball with one. Anybody knows Jake Ford? He was unbelievable with his hands. He looked like a truck driver, but from his hand standpoint, he was ungodly with his hands. And it's always his greatest advantage. You would never look at that guy and say he was the player of the year in college baseball when we were there, but that guy was the player of the year in college baseball. So it's hard. Sometimes people just have it. Yeah, and he's one of those kids.
Well, hey, your catcher.
Yeah, he's really good. He blocked at everything.
Oh, we have a phenomenal catcher. And normally I'm not really impressed with somebody else's catcher, but your catcher, he knows what he's doing. It's pretty awesome to watch. Did you really have a 13-hour practice at Spalding?
Yeah, when Weeder mentioned that, I started twitching a little bit. But we had that's not the only practice we could spend shows talking about what we did in college. But yeah, that first practice, like it really set the
legit.
Tone. So let me tell you why that happens, though. So Coach Cox benefited from the ability. So NAI is so much different than NCAA. NCAA has restrictions on
rules.
Time.
I was going to say
there is zero rules for NAI, and Coach Cox was one of those guys. He took full advantage of those rules. So the practice was 3 to 4 hours, and you're staying before, you're staying after, and it was intense. I haven't got to that level with our kids yet.
Right.
Yeah.
Hey, well, I will tell you. I will say this: we played KBC West in a scrimmage, and when we're leaving, this is a school night, pretty late. I mean, 9. I don't know what it was. Our team's leaving. Jason takes his team back out on the field to practice. I was like, well, that's how you get it done, right there, man.
Well, we're essentially we're essentially almost a new team.
Right.
So we're really trying to build a certain philosophy, a certain standard, and that'll go away obviously eventually. But with a lot of new guys, they're getting to know each other and they're getting to know us coaches, and there's a certain standard that has to be set, and they're doing great.
No, yeah, absolutely, man. You guys are off to a great start. All right, so we have a little bit of an announcement to make. Rick and I decided this, about an hour ago. We're going to start a Kentuckiana Travel Ball Podcast Coaches Poll. And so I want your input on this, Jason. So we're now, don't get me wrong. Sean Johnson, John Alvey do an awesome job with their polls. I'm not trying to step on their toes. I'm not trying to do anything to where it's the same thing. I'm not trying to compete. What we want to do is just a straight up coaches poll. It's not our opinion. Yeah. It's not us
There's
evaluating
no
teams.
Just
straight
up
well,
coaches
look,
voted.
like Sean and John, that what they do is they use Game Changer and they use U-Trip results, and they do a ton of research to make sure they're trying to get those teams, in the right spots. Now, I understand there's going to be some politics involved when we do a coaches poll. We're just going to do a straight up coaches poll. Okay. So we're going to invite a certain amount of coaches to rank who you think 1 to 20 is in your particular age group. Jason, give me your feedback on this. How do we do this right?
I like it. I think it helps for the kids from a motivation standpoint. I always find it difficult. The difficult part with ranking kids the way we have travel ball is how do you determine because we have levels, obviously. You have single A, double A. So if a team is really successful in double A, do you put them above a double A team? Do you put them above a triple A team because they won a single A tournament? That's the hardest thing to do when you're doing like rankings, because you'll see teams that are very successful. If you're ranked above a triple A team, it's time to move up. So that's the hardest part when you look at rankings is you're looking at them going, yeah, they've won like 3 or 4 single A tournaments. It's time to move
well,
up.
It may be a message for that coach. Yeah. Look, you need to be moving your team up because look, this is what everybody thinks of you.
Absolutely.
You're ranked above all these AAA teams, so you probably ought to be in that AAA category.
Yeah.
It could be interesting on that front too.
I think so. I think you need that. I think you need that because you start seeing those teams that are successful in AA, and you're like, well, if you're that successful, you should probably be challenging yourself.
Do you think we need more AAA teams?
I think a lot of teams are probably AAA that don't realize. I mean, you guys are a AAA team. The Stars are now the Ironmen.
Yeah.
Hands down AAA team.
Yeah.
McVoy, who's now the Bulls White, easy AAA team.
Yeah.
There's a lot more AAA teams out there that don't realize that how good they could be.
Right.
And it's like a natural, it's a fear of it, something like that. Like, I'll tell you right now, our team for the past couple of years is not overly that much talented. Well, we're confident we can go play in those tournaments.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we lose, sometimes we win.
Mm-hmm.
But in playing in a couple of AA tournaments a couple of years ago, it's like it's too different. It's too different from what we're used to because you get to a certain level and you just want every kid to be challenged. And I don't want it to be too easy. And not that AA and single A is easy ball, but I want our kids to when they get done with the tournament, they get beat. They're going to get beat by like baseball. And there's probably 2 things that I think personally differentiate single A, AA from AAA major, and it's errors and it's walks. And there's just not as many at AA and AAA to the point to where I got to harp on our pitchers that walks equal runs at
every
AAA
time
because they're going to score every single time.
Yeah.
Walks and errors are the biggest. You just don't get as many in AAA.
Gotcha.
So when that happens, it kills you. So
when you hit the ball, you got to get a hit. I mean, you can't.
Well,
can't have the
Rick. Jason brings up an interesting point here, and we got a couple minutes left. But we played a team this past weekend in a AA event. It wasn't a AA team, and it was one of those things where, and I mean on the lower level, and it just wasn't. I don't know. It just wasn't really what we needed at the time from a competition standpoint.
Right.
Now they may get there, and they may be great over time, but they just weren't ready for that level.
Well, I think it's a different too. There's one-off games, obviously. A pitcher goes out there and has a bad day and walks 4 or 5 guys, and all 4 or 5 guys score, and that's hard to come back from. So, but is that a consistent thing? And I think the biggest separator is that's common more often in the lower level than it is at the upper level. We have big kids that throw bad all the time, and it's a 1 game off situation. The next game we're just fine. It's like we know with us, if we walk 5 batters or less a game, we're probably going to win. When we walk more than that, we got problems because it's hard to overcome the hits that are going to happen, plus the errors, plus the free passes. So we harp on that a lot. The biggest difference when I watch other teams is there's more walks, there's more errors. So
that makes sense.
So it's just less effort to score.
That makes sense. Right. All right, well, back to our coaches poll. Do you think we should allow coaches to vote for their own teams, or they have to take their team out of it?
It depends on how many coaches you have voting, I think if you only have 8 or 9 coaches, and if your team is good, your vote's not going to matter.
That's just it, man. I think we open it up to 25, 30 coaches.
We got to find them all.
Yeah, I think it'd be easy to do that.
I don't think their vote's going to matter either way. Honestly, I think if you're
it'll bear out.
Yeah, the rankings will bear out anyway. If you have 20 coaches voting and you say, well, your vote don't count, I don't think that one vote's going to matter that much.
You're probably right.
Yeah.
You're probably right.
And that way you can see 20.
You can see and that's fine. I mean, we can probably get.
We need
more
to find
20.
them all. I mean, we need to try to get them all.
Yeah, for sure. But to your point, Jason, I think it's kind of you see where your coach thinks their particular team ranks and stacks up anyways too. So that's interesting.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of coaches wouldn't put their team up there just to motivate them even more. Like, I wouldn't want my team to be seen in that ranking because I want to go to them and say, look what they think about you guys.
Right.
And that's what I would do.
Yeah, well, of course. It's bulletin board material.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
I mean, that's what it is.
It's all for fun anyway.
Exactly.
It is. Well, it is all for fun. I mean, they're 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 years old.
Right.
So.
And that's the whole other trouble. I think
Exactly.
I think the parents and coaches take more pride in that stuff than the players
They do.
Yeah.
And, and I know you've got guys that you played ball with that think it's the silliest thing ever that there are rankings. But, man, I tell you, there's a lot of people that like it. The kids love it. There's a lot of fun that comes out of it.
Well, there's a part of the ball these days that we're never going to be able to relate to because when I was their age, we played 10 games and the season was over, and that's
was it.
True.
And there wasn't all this different teams. You went to the next sport.
We don't have the ability to quantify how serious like baseball is now, but they're also able to accomplish so much more at a young level, and it means so much more. So I tell people all the time, like, if we had this stuff when I played, a lot of kids that I played ball with in high school, they would have played college ball because those coaches don't have the budgets to go out there and recruit. They would have played college ball.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm going to wrap this one up. I want to say thank you to our sponsor, Guardian Baseball. We're proudly sponsored by GuardianBaseball.com. This is your last chance for the Kentuckiana Easton Hype Bat giveaway. I'll have the link in the descriptions of the podcast. Go there. Yeah, get hype, man. Have you heard of the Hype Bat? I
have not heard of the Hype Bat. I'm really interested because I'm an Easton guy, and
Are you an Easton guy?
I've not heard the Hype Bat. I'm about to find out what's going on there.
Have you used Guardian for anything?
I have not used Guardian yet. I have submitted into every single drawing you've had.
There you go. All right. Well, maybe you'll win this Easton Hype Bat. I mean, it's about time. So we'll see what happens. Thank you for listening to the Kentuckiana Travel Ball Podcast. Be on the lookout for the Kentuckiana Travel Ball Podcast Coaches Poll coming to you soon, I think. I hope.
Yep.
We'll see. I don't know. Rick's going to head this one up. I'm going to put Rick in charge
You're
of that
in for
one.
a treat.
So, all right. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next time.